Hey guys, and welcome to the newest episode of Be Hero Presents the Bump Card Wrestling Podcast. I am your host, as always, Brian, and with me tonight is my tag partner, Psycho. How are you tonight, Psycho?
I'm doing good. I'm more tired than normal, but yeah, I'm doing good.
Yeah, same here, man. Also quite tired. Didn't get a whole lot of sleep after the wife went to work last night, and so yeah, it was a long morning. But any of that, we have another great review for you guys. This time we are reviewing the newest AEW pay-per-view, AEW Dynasty, which we will be going over shortly right after our weekly news of wrestling. But spoiler alert, I really enjoyed this pay-per-view. So we'll go over that in just a moment. So stay tuned with us on that. But as we get going, as we do every week, and what a week it was for news and wrestling, we are going to go over some of the big things in the wrestling world. So I'm not going to per se bury the lead just yet, but there's one big bit of news that we're going to hold off on talking about until towards the end, which does tie into Dynasty. So when we get there, we'll also give you guys a bit of a spoiler warning going into this. I mean, mind you, you're listening to a review of a pay-per-view. Hopefully you watch the pay-per-view before you listen to the review. If not, pause this, go watch Dynasty, come back.
Yeah, because otherwise you won't get the every detail covered, because that's not how we do our reviews.
It's true. So you would need to make sure they cover all of that. So now that you left, welcome back. That being said, we're going to cover a couple of quick things real fast. I want to just touch on one really quickly. I don't have the full information on this. I can't find it where I believe it was Fightful Select. They're the ones who brought up the information first, but I can't find their original post about it. But over the last couple of days, going to the Grant lawsuit against McMahon, McMahon's lawyer has started putting out segments of information about the lawsuit as a whole, claiming different aspects of Grant's story are incorrect and gave proof of different timing, stuff with like her father, taking care of her father when her father had already passed, dealing with the trauma of that while being involved with McMahon, and several other things in that past. I wanted to bring it up because you also subsequently the next day had Miss Grant and her lawyers trying to basically say that none of that is true and going against all of that again. There's a whole bunch more to that. And I know that the whole stuff with McMahon and Grant's lawsuits has been a big amount of news in the wrestling world over the last year and a half, really. So go to Fightful Select's Twitter page. You'll be able to find the information there. I couldn't find it right away, but that was only because I was looking just a few minutes before this. But I do want to touch on it because it is kind of an important bit to the case going on. Additionally, McMahon is also countersuing now, stating that Ms. Grant had broken the NDA she had signed, which kind of caused the whole bit of this. So follow up with them to get more information on this. It is going to be definitely worth the read to read up on this. Warning, there's a lot of stuff in the whole thing, if you haven't read, that is pretty terrible. So I know you read the whole thing, Psycho, so.
Yeah. Yes, I did.
Yeah. I chose not to. I have two young daughters, and that was not something I wanted in my brain. So I did not read the whole thing. That all being said, let's go ahead and talk about contracts negotiations and a new rule that just came out. As of the 23rd of April, so just a couple days ago as we are airing this, or are recording this, excuse me, the Federal Trade Commission, the FTC, has come up with a ruling on a court case stating that, or prohibiting all non-compete agreements or clauses on contracts or any variety for any employee at any level without extremely limited exceptions are prohibited. They won't be able to be applied anymore. And so, and this also is means that there's nothing that's been grandfathered in. So ostensibly, anybody right now who is with a wrestling promotion that has signed a contract with a no compete clause doesn't matter anymore.
Yes and no. I don't know. The way that that's worded makes me think, okay, what qualifies for an exception?
Limited exception,
right?
Yeah.
Limited exceptions, but what qualifies for it? Maybe it's something where wrestling falls under that, because it's a very interesting industry, and there's, I don't know. I would say that I'm not 100%. I'd have to read up on it a little bit more to kind of see what's allowed, what's not, and what they would consider an exception. Because that would be huge if it covered, no competes in wrestling, especially if they're paying them. Though I think that might be an exception because they do pay them in those 90-day no competes, so it's not like they don't have money coming in. Whereas some other businesses, it's once you're let go, you're not getting paid, but you can't compete and go to another similar, company for a period of time. And I think that is probably more what that would apply to, because they could say, well, you can't stop them from making a living. Whereas the no competes in wrestling, they're still getting paid. So it's like they're under a contract, but they're just not there, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And I think that might be that could easily be one of the exceptions, but I think that also works both ways too, right? So if the non competes clause that are in these contracts state that you can't work for 90 days for a different company that's on TV, right? And as such, we will pay you during that 90 days, the remainder of whatever your percentage of your contract is, or whatever the wording is for that, right? Theoretically, it would work both ways. So if the no compete, that means that the person can once again go and compete somewhere else, even like the next day. But then there's no requirement for them to have to pay for those 90 days, right? So I think that's where the counterbalance would be in that scenario. I think the limited exceptions would deal with direct IP information. So, like, let's say that somebody working at like a video game for Microsoft couldn't go and suddenly now work for Sony, taking all the information from that, what they worked on Microsoft. I think that's probably more of the likeliness of those non-compete clauses that would be in effect. When I was working for Walmart, and I know this is totally different, but I was working for Walmart in the cell phone department. Walmart did have a no-compete clause with any of their vendors, which meaning that if T-Mobile wanted me to go work for them, and this actually did happen, they offered me a job to go work as one of their on-site reps for Walmart. I had to do a 60-day no-compete, and Walmart doesn't pay. So if you leave, you would leave without getting paid for 60 days, and T-Mobile wouldn't be able to hire me for those 60 days. So I'd be essentially going 2 months without getting paid anywhere from between those two. I have to go work at another job in between just to be able to go there. So, and that was dealing with direct competition of the sales from Walmart to directly the sales from T-Mobile. But I don't know how that would be in effect anymore. I don't know if that would be something that would apply as a limited exception. I think, again, we'd have to read up on the exact things. So go into read up on the FTC rules. They just put it up on their website, the list of the exceptions and everything as of the 23rd. So if you want to read more, go on to the Federal Trade Commission's website, and they'll have all that information there for you. All right, and then the last thing I want to bring up before we jump into the piece of news that you want to bring up is actually dealing with the recent releases by the WWE. So over the weekend, starting on the 19th, the WWE started releasing a small handful of people. They didn't give any cause for the reasonings of why, but they have been released. Some of these people, I don't want to say makes sense, but they kind of do because they weren't really being used for creative reasons. So you have Zion Quinn, who was in NXT for a long time. And then technically he was brought up as a free agent at the draft last year. And at that time, he only ended up having 2 matches on the main card, and including his last match, which was against Braun Breaker shortly after Braun Breaker signed with SmackDown, and Braun Breaker beat him in like 30 seconds. The big thing for Zion Quinn, and he was a very good worker. He just they didn't seem to have anything good for him for creative. He was the first Chinese-born athlete in the WWE. So, and then also along with him was Xia Li, who had some interesting stuff story-wise, but nothing ever seemed to just go with hers. They did a thing when Becky was the NXT champion that they were starting to do a thing with her and Becky, and they didn't. They also had right about that same time they had this Xia Li heel. Xia Li, where she was just knocking everybody out with a spin heel kick, and like putting them down, stuff with it, and they kind of just never did anything with it. And she was a fine worker. She did a lot of time in NXT as well, and again, she was a fine worker, but the crowd just never seemed to be interested in her. She didn't give an emotional reaction, and you'll see that a lot with a lot of these people who were released, save one. Additionally, with that, in that same time, in the Sheer, so you had Senga and Veer Maha, both of them from the tag team of Indashir. They were released. A similar thing. They were used sparingly whenever they needed big men for tag and stuff like that. They would be used for that scenario. And then also, somewhat surprisingly, a former WWE champion was released. I believe he was. I don't remember if he was WWE champion or world champion, but one of the two.
He was WWE champion.
Yeah, and he was released, and he was the manager for them, and it was Jinder Mahal. Jinder Mahal was released all at the same time. Again, they didn't give any particular things for why any of these members were released. And this all happened on the 19th and 20th for all of them being released.
So they didn't have to give a reason for most of these, because most of these, like, for the average viewer, like, most of these guys, they wouldn't even know. And that's my opinion. Yeah. They weren't doing a lot with them, so they were expendable, not as people, but as talent, because they've got so much talent right now, and they've got some big stars working with the company, and it's only so much airtime that they can put people on TV.
You see a similar thing too in other sports like football and baseball, and even basketball to a minor extent. You'll see times where they'll have these people to pick up and thought they might be able to do something with them, and then after a little bit, it just doesn't seem to click or what have you. It's very much a similar thought,
right? And I think Jinder Mahal is probably the most surprising out of that list. But if you really think about it, like, he kind of overachieved as is.
Very much so.
You know, winning the WWE championship. I mean, he's probably achieved like everything that he possibly could achieve there, and probably is going to make a lot of money on the indies, probably, and could go elsewhere, you know, and make some money.
If he went anywhere, I would imagine it'd be TNA. I could imagine AEW pick him up.
Yeah, I mean, who knows? But probably more likely TNA. I'm just happy that we can now say that Jinder has been hindered. I had to get that in.
And just a reminder, when Jinder was WWE champion, it was also when they were doing that big push into the continent of India, where he was from. which was part of the large part of the reason that he was put into that role of beating Randy Orton and going and being champion for a pretty good long time. It was like 8 months. So, but that wasn't the only releases. We actually had 2 more that came through, and they were both fairly surprising. So you had on the 22nd, you had Von Wagner. He's a second generation wrestler, and he's been in the NXT system for a while. But over the last about a year and a half, he's really started coming on and being a fan favorite in NXT. And there's actually rumors that he was going to be drafted up to the main roster, finishing the storyline. He was working with Robbie B's character, whose name I can't remember, in there, and he was starting to do something. He wasn't the greatest on the mic, but you could have easily, and he's a big dude. You could have easily put a mouthpiece on him. And had him work that way, which is what Robbie was doing for him, and it worked out well for a lot of things. He could have easily been a good mid-card mainstay in the main roster, but he wasn't. I'm not sure the reasoning for releasing him, which is quite sad. Again, he was kind of an NXT sweetheart. Especially towards the end. So, and then the last one, which actually I find to be the most surprising because of the potential that was there, was Cameron Grimes. Cameron Grimes was released yesterday, or 2 days ago, the 23rd. Trevor Lee is his gimmick working name on the Indies, which is he's probably going to go back to. Again, it was an NXT star, and he started to do some stuff on the main roster, but he would have a stop and start a lot. I just felt like the creative never knew what to do with him. But on NXT, he, especially towards the end, was doing some great stuff. Ended up becoming North American champion. He had a great program. He worked with LA Knight for the $1 million belt that they were doing a storyline with, where he had won. I can't remember if it was in the lottery or he won. Became a overnight millionaire, and he was kind of doing $1 million man kind of thing, but as a face. And then they had a tournament for the $1 million belt for DiBiase's belt, and it came down to between him and LA Knight, and then they kind of had a program after that tournament to see who holds the belt and all that stuff. It was a very, very good program, and Cameron Grimes, Trevor Lee, was just such a great worker. And I've watched him on the indies in the past, from PWG to several of the other indies and stuff. And he can do just about anything you want story-wise. He's such a great character worker and story worker. He could do anything. And then also being amazingly athletic and a great worker. So I was very surprised to see that they let him go. And again, it's the same thing. It's just too much talent for not enough airtime. And sadly, when you have talent like Finn Balor and Ricochet and Seth Rollins, you don't need a Trevor Lee or Cameron Grimes, because it's very much the same. Now, they could have done something separately, like different for him, but there's so much talent like that. And then there's also so much young talent coming from NXT that are very much the same like him. He also gave a heartfelt message on his TikTok, and which subsequently went to Twitter and everything else, thanking WWE for their time and the fans and everything else. It's a really good watch if you haven't got to watch it yet. You can find him, I believe it's at Trevor Lee on TikTok. So
very interesting.
All right, well, that's all the releases on there. And last but not least, when it comes to news, take it away, Psycho.
So I was kind of reading up on what happened on Dynamite, AEW Dynamite, that happened yesterday as we're recording this.
Uh-huh.
And there was a lot of buzz about this big closing angle that they did. And so I actually watched I went back and watched it.
So did I.
And because that's usually how I watch wrestling these days. I wait till there's buzz about something, and then I'll go back and see what the buzz is about. Or if there's something like I'm particularly interested in, I'll go back and watch it. I don't watch things live for the most part, except for the pay-per-views. So Jack Perry, spoiler alert, Jack Perry, who we'll get to later on when we talk about Dynasty, but he came out and basically he was kind of cutting a babyface promo at first, and called Tony Khan out to the ring, and said that he's still like everything that or the most important thing to him is for AEW to succeed. And he says, "Shake my hand and reinstate me." Tony Khan shakes his hand, and they're kind of like holding each other's hands up and congratulatory. And then Jack Perry punches Tony Khan in the gut with the microphone, and Tony Khan kind of does a weird sell job, because
that's an understatement.
I mean, it's not like Vince McMahon taking the stunner. Don't get me wrong.
It's true. It's not as funny.
Right. It's not so bad. It's so bad. It's like, oh my gosh, but at the same time, he gets punched in the gut and acts like he just got shot, but not in the gut. He just lays like he completely got knocked out from it. And then there's a delayed selling of the stomach. And then the Young Bucks and Okada come out, and basically they're like, "What are you doing? Are you have you lost your mind?" type deal. And then the Young Bucks they pick up Tony Khan, and they give him what's the move called?
It was formerly called the Meltzer Driver.
Yes.
It is now called, thanks to their response of this whole event after Twitter, the Tony Khan Driver.
Okay. So they hit this move, right? And Tony Khan's just out, like limp as can be. And then the most interesting thing to me, and by the way, I thought Jack Perry cut a pretty good promo to start. Like, he sounded much better than I ever remember him being on the mic.
Mm-hmm.
And the crowd was doing kind of the chant of the "Oh, cry me a river." So that's
he got both that, and then towards the end of his promo, he got "You're our scapegoat."
Yes,
because that's his title now, is the scapegoat Jack Perry, because he's been using this whole thing as he's the scapegoat for all of this event.
Yes, and so then the referees come out, they get the Elite out of there, and then like some wrestlers come into the ring they're checking on Tony Khan, and then surprisingly Tony Khan's dad, what's his name, is it Sahir Khan?
Sahir Khan.
Yeah. So his dad is makes an appearance out there, and like some of the wrestlers notice him in the ring, and they're like, "Oh my gosh, it's him." That's, to my knowledge, that's the first time he's ever appeared on an AEW second time that he's appeared on an AEW television show.
Right after, I think, the first All In.
Okay.
He came out with essentially a big old check. But that essentially was the only time.
This is the first time he's appeared in an angle, right?
Yes. Same for Tony.
Yeah. Tony's usually not involved in that stuff. So to see him, basically play the Bischoff to the outsiders type thing here, which makes me also like wonder if they're going to do that whole thing and Tony Khan's eventually going to be the heel, owner, and he's going to be in charge of the Elite or something, and they'll do that angle. Which this whole thing to me, I'm torn on it in a way, because now that Tony Khan has involved himself in a storyline like that, on one hand, it's smart. They needed to do something, I think, at this point to kind of, they needed something hot, that would get people talking. They desperately needed that, because the returns just aren't cutting it, because they show up, and they're hot for a week or two, and then they're forgotten basically, and they lose all their heat. So for them to do something like this, now everything's going to be in the follow-up, right? So how do they follow up on this? Who's going to oppose them, basically? But I applaud them for trying to do something, because this doesn't seem like a normal thing that Tony Khan would book.
I agree. This definitely feels like something different. I would hazard a guess this is probably a booking by the Bucks. This feels more like that form. And to be 100% honest with you, this angle should be the angle that makes Jack Perry's heel run. Jack Perry should be the one to come out to be like, the one on top. Tony shouldn't come out to deal with this anymore and stuff like that. Outside of maybe like putting a match together kind of thing. It's like, oh, you did this to me. Now this is your punishment. You have to go and do this against these so-and-sos. Right? That should be the only bit that Tony has in this at all. Outside of, getting that heel heat for Jack Perry. Subsequently, and I'm going to bring this up just because there's not a better time. I was watching the NFL draft just before we got on here, and I'm not going to lie, I was watching it just to see if Tony Khan, who is owner of the Jacksonville Jaguars, was going to keep kayfabe and show up in a neck brace. And lo and behold, he sure as shit did. He was in a neck brace, and the commentators of the draft actually went out of their way to mention him being hit with a pile driver. And this is what happens when you mix the NFL and and AEW, which is a huge thing for them. It's a huge thing for AEW to be able to get that big platform, the NFL draft, to be able to do that. And now people are going to go watch it. Like, I will be surprised if Dynamite next week is not one of the bigger draws that they've had in a long time for viewership. Between the storyline going on, the clips going out there, and then the super casual fans who also are football fans, because a lot of football fans and wrestling fans, like, they're in that same demo, right? So they're going to want to see it and see, oh, how did this scrawny little geek end up taking a pile driver? Like, how did this all happen? And with that being said, I think this is the path that AEW needs to go down. We've talked about it before, where AEW is such a spot fest, a dream match making, but not really having a storyline show, that they need to start going to more storyline stuff. And I think that does tie into what you were saying with them having, these returns or these names come in and whatnot and work a couple of shows, and then, it just kind of dies down for them. And that's because over the last, about 3 years, they've worked in this dream match mode. Oh, let's put these dream matches together without any storyline. Just like, oh, it'd be cool. Let's see these two together. Let's go do that. And they build the pay-per-view and have great matches, and then nothing because there's no storyline. But now you're building stuff with storyline, which we will be touching here shortly on Dynasty, because there's a lot of stuff that made storyline in this pay-per-view.
Yeah, and I mentioned, though, that I was torn, and my other side of that is that, again, it's in the follow-up, but this could end up being just like almost like a a rehash of more successful stories, right? Because if they do the whole thing where Tony Khan ends up being the evil owner type thing, and maybe it'll work, maybe it will, maybe he has it in him. I don't know that he does.
No.
Or if he becomes a focus because of this, and the angle's really, focused on him, where there's not going to be a match payoff type thing, if they don't follow up on this at all, and Tony Khan just shows up the next week and ignores it, which doesn't seem like that's the case since he was wearing the neck brace, which is very much like a Vince McMahon thing, like when he went to the steroid trials with the neck brace, Vince. So I wonder if that's kind of a throwback to that. But it's going to be interesting to see how they follow up with it, if they can keep that momentum going, because this could be like the Devil thing. Like when the Devil storyline started, it had my interest. It's like, oh, who could this be? And then when it was finally revealed and paid off, and yes, some of that's injuries and everything like that, but there wasn't any pivots on that. So when it was revealed, it's not looked back on fondly now, because it's all in where it leads.
Yeah. And again, injuries was the one that definitely helped with killing that, but also time, right? They kept dragging it out and dragging it out and dragging it out in a way where you almost start to forget about it. And then they bring something back up again. It was like the worst case to hemorrhoids ever, because it just coming back up, and it really didn't need to. They could have just let it die in the vine and not ever do anything with it, and it would have had about the same amount of impact.
Yeah. So
I hope this does build it, though. And like I said, I think this should be the thing that builds heel Jack Perry more than anything else, because you have all of that opportunity, right? You have all of those CM Punk stands, Nick, that might want to, see him get his comeuppance because of everything that happened. And this is going to help with that if they do it right. We'll just have to see how they go. But I after Dynasty, I have a little more faith than I would have before Dynasty that they might go in the right path with this.
I'm in a wait and see approach as far as that goes, because they've burned me quite a few times with getting my hopes up, and so I would love nothing more than for them to have me excited like when AEW was in its first couple of years. I think it's possible. They just need the right story. This could be it. And then they need to keep building on that. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah. They need their bloodline story, essentially.
Exactly. They need something to give them a shot in the arm.
Yep. So, with all that being said, let's go ahead and jump into the review of AEW Dynasty.
Yes, we're just going to talk about the main card. So the pre-show was the pre-show. There were matches there. None of it really,
we had the AEW
we did
trios unification.
We did have that. So if you want to mention who won that, I mean,
it was the Bullet Club Gold. Mm-hmm. They won. It was a decent match, good story building with everything. It was something I was talking about before, and I talked about this with Psycho going into this. It had a 6-month story to build into this match, so it made sense. I was kind of sad to see that this was on the pre-show, though, because I think this deserves better.
Yeah.
So that's why I want to bring it up now.
Sure. So the opener to the Dynasty pay-per-view proper was for the AEW Continental Championship. You had, can I just say Okada?
Yes, you can just say Okada.
Okay, because I'm gonna butcher the first name if I don't. So Okada versus
Kushida, Kushida Okada or Kamoshida Okada.
I think you got it right the first time. Yeah, I think it's Kushida Okada. Either way, versus Pac, and this one's like it kind of started a little bit slow, even though the crowd was like, they were kind of chomping at the bit of this match. But once it got really going, it was fantastic. Like, I honestly think it was the second best match on the show.
I remember us talking about this match as we got on, and I watch New Japan, so I already knew who Okada was, and of course, we've watched Pac. I mean, we've seen him around for a long time. Known several people have worked him on the indies, stuff like that. So I've known a Pac for a long time. So I was excited for this match. This was not the match that made me buy the pay per view, but this was definitely we're so totally getting this match kind of match, or totally getting this pay per view kind of match. So I already knew what we were going to get, and I think it delivered exactly what it needed to do. My favorite part, though, was when you and I were talking about this match. By the end of it, Psycho's like, or at the beginning of it, it's like, casual fans are going to know who Okada is and stuff like that. They might know Pac, but they don't know who Okada is. So I don't know if this is the right place for him and stuff like that. And by the end, he's like, "Oh, now I'm an Okada fan."
The part that really won me over, yes, he was doing great wrestling and it was fantastic, but at the same time, AEW kind of has that sense about them where they'll put this great match on with no story, and it doesn't, like, when you've seen it so many times, it's like, okay, it doesn't mean anything though, right? That was not the case here, because they started slow, they built up to it, and the part that really won me over, so Okada is going for setting up his Rainmaker, right?
Yep.
He's setting up his Rainmaker, and the crowd's all like, and then Okada pulls his hand out, and flips off the crowd. It was amazing heat. It was amazing. So then the fans were kind of like 50-50 on who to cheer for until that moment. And then Okada was full on heel. The crowd was booing him, and it made the match, because the fans solidly had somebody to cheer for then, and they started cheering Pac. And I don't know if Pac has been cheered like that in a long time. And like the moves and all of that was fantastic, but it was really the story and the heel heat, that Okada was getting. And then let's see here. So the finish kind of, because we can go over a lot during the match. There was a lot that happened, but the finisher has Pac going up to the top rope for his Black Arrow. Let's see here. And he hits Okada's knees. Okada puts up his knees, and then he hits the Rainmaker to finish the match and get the pin.
Ripcord clothesline, by the way, for anyone who doesn't know what the Rainmaker is.
Oh, yes. And this was a darn good match, and I don't know if I would have put it as the opener. I think they could have built this up as like a semi-main event type deal, or at least a top three, like a three top matches type deal, and it could have went like third from the top maybe, or even like it could have went mid card, and been a big match in the mid card. I don't know if I would have put this as the opener, but as an opener, it definitely got the crowd pumped.
Yeah, and I think it was a good choice for the opener, honestly, because of that. Like, it did exactly what it needed to do, was to get the crowd hot. They did it in a way where you also got to build Okada for the casual fans or fans who've never seen him before, like yourself. And you also get to do something that, like, as an opener, you are the first one out there. So you get to have the opportunity to do everything first in the show. So in this show, we have multiple people flip people off. We see it, I think, 3 different times in the show, maybe 4. the first one is the one that matters. Every other time is diminishing returns. And the first one was Okada, and he did it in the right place at the right time. And for those who haven't seen it, they do a pan in or zoom in on Okada right before he goes to hit the Rainmaker, and then usually the announcer from New Japan or whomever would be like Rainmaker as you go to hit it. And they do the pan in like they're about ready to do it, and that's when Okada flipped up. So for the fans watching and the audience, they saw him just flip him off, but you get that bit of a tease, like he's going for his big move because of the way they sold it on TV. If you knew, if to those you know, and they did that for him. It was great. So I agree that was a great turning point and a great way to make Okada and what they were doing. I really enjoyed this match.
And Okada's facials were really good too with his selling. Like he's going to be a star. And I know there's listeners that are listening. It's like, he's already a star. It's like, that's why they're paying him so much money. Go look up how much they're paying Okada. But, but at the same time, it's like, this is a whole new audience, right? It's hardcores, and so they mostly probably know of him. But then there's people like me who I consider myself a hardcore fan, but, at the same time, I've never seen an Okada match. It's true. Don't hate on me for it. I've never seen him work. I know of him, and I know he's supposed to be a big deal. But until I saw this match, I didn't know why. I had my expectations high, but he exceeded them, and I think he's going to be every bit the star that they're going to use him as. I think he's right up there with Will Ospreay, to be honest. I think if they ever wrestle like on this, in AEW, I think it's going to be must see.
I agree. They actually have worked also multiple times in New Japan, and they were fantastic matches. Him and Kenny Omega have an amazing set of three that they do in New Japan, starting at I believe it started at a G1 in 2021, and they were fantastic. So if you haven't gotten to see Okada before this, go watch him in New Japan and watch just how amazing he can be, and then watch this. And the interesting thing too is the style is not much different that he needed to do from that to this. So, yeah, I'm super excited to see more of him in AEW.
Yes. So following that, because that was a tough match to follow. But following that, you've got the House of Black versus Adam Copeland, Eddie Kingston, and Mark Briscoe. I actually think this would have been a good opener to get the crowd into things, because I thought that this was an all right match. It wasn't a show stealer or anything, but I think that it did all right in setting up Copeland's next challenger, and for his TNT championship. And this was exactly what I thought it was going to be.
I didn't pay attention to this match at all.
Well, I mean, like I said, it was a tough act to follow, what they just followed. But well, so House of Black wins. Malachi Black pins Adam Copeland with his after his black mass kick. I think this match would have been a little bit. It went 17 and a half minutes. I think it would have been a little bit better condensed, maybe to like 14 minutes. But all in all, I think this would have worked better as the opener, and I think we would have paid more attention to it if it had been the opener.
I think I would agree, like, because you start off with an opener, you're wanting, you need that fix essentially, right, of wrestling, and I think I would have been able to keep my attention better. But to be honest, this match was boring to me. Like, I had a very hard time wanting to care about anything in this match. Didn't feel like really much of a story. In fact, the story I wanted, we didn't get. So in the trios match, you had Mark Briscoe, Eddie Kingston, and Adam Copeland going against the House of Black. Eddie Kingston, who was formerly the ROH champion, and lost it to Mark Briscoe like not even 3 weeks beforehand. I would have liked to see Eddie Kingston turning heel and doing something in air that would have cost the match going against Mark Briscoe. But they didn't do that. I think that would have been a better way to story, and that would have allowed it to tie into a bunch of stuff. I know we always harp on they have way too many titles and they should keep ROH and AEW as separate, but I think this would have been the exception to do it in because I think it would have fit better with what was going on.
Well, I kind of feel too that yes, I agree that they honestly should keep them separate, but they're not keeping them separate because they're fully acknowledging, oh, they're the Ring of Honor champion and they're on the show. They're defending titles on the show. They've had AEW wrestlers, that are big name stars win Ring of Honor titles. I mean, they just had a unification match of the trios championships on the pre-show. So they're not keeping them separate. So if they're going to do that, then I'm with you a little bit that why not continue storylines across both?
Yeah, and I think that would have made the match more interesting, right? To have some dysfunction there, but then maybe it seems like they're not going to be dysfunctional. They're going to work it out, and then they screw it. And they can even have it too, where Copeland's trying to break it up, and then turns right into the Black Mass, and you have your finish there. I believe there was a distraction for the finish, and that's how he got to the taking the Black Mass.
Well, there was Malachi Black. I think I said Aleister Black before. I'm sorry if I did.
Same difference.
Yeah, Malachi Black hit the mist, the black mist into Adam Copeland. And so that's kind of where, I missed that.
And we could have still done that. Like, you could have had Kingston and Briscoe going at it, and then have Edge or Adam Copeland trying to break it up. And as he finally gets them out the ring, turns around, takes the mist, like, oh, I'm blind now, and then goes there. Or you even have the other two duck as he's trying to break them up, and then takes the mist that way. Like, there was opportunity there, they just didn't do it. And I think that would have made this match better because it would have had story. The only story that we got at all was the setup for a match between Black and Copeland. And they did it a little bit because they talked about it towards the end that the only time that Copeland and Aleister Black, or Malachi Black, excuse me, even started attacking each other, touching each other, giggity, was at the end of the match, which is exactly what you want to do in a build-up like this. But you had opportunity to make more stories, not generally a bad thing.
I do think, though, that when they do have that singles match for the TNT Championship, I'll be a lot more interested in that when it's one-on-one. Because I think that Adam Copeland and Malachi Black can have an absolute amazing match. So the work will be pretty good there, and there is a little bit of story, so that always helps.
Yep.
Okay, so next we've got Willow Nightingale challenging for the TBS Championship, which is just the women's championship, against Julia Hart. This match, honestly, was pretty much a squash for Willow over Julia. It only lasted, it lasted 6 minutes, so I guess it wasn't a complete squash because, I think Julia did get some offense
in. Yeah.
But it was very convincingly, Willow Nightingale pinned her clean as a sheet.
It was like I would say it was like a 70-30 Willow match, which for the size difference, that's kind of what you want.
Yeah.
Because you don't really want somebody Julia's size, because she's like 90 pounds, taking Willow down, who's a bigger girl, and taking her down easily. Like, you need to have it make sense. So I think this match actually did fairly well for what it needed to do.
I did think with Chris Statlander was at ringside in Willow's corner, and I think we had talked about that. We thought that Chris Statlander was going to turn heel and turn on Willow. That didn't happen. But Mercedes Moné did come out to the ring, and they basically
all the way down to the ring.
Yes, she took her time getting down to the ring, and then they do this maybe 20 seconds, maybe like stare down, and then she leaves. They did announce that they're going to be wrestling each other for that newly won TBS championship at the next AEW pay-per-view, Double or Nothing. So finally we're going to get to see Mercedes Moné work a match in AEW.
And a fitting match too, because the match she got injured in was for the women's strong title in New Japan, and it was against Willow Nightingale.
Yeah, so I mean the story's there. I just worry that Willow's going to be a transitional champion here, and she's going to go ahead and put over Mercedes. I mean, I can't see Willow beating Mercedes Moné in this match. I think if the title's not going to change hands, I could see some sort of a draw or a disqualification from somebody else running in or something like that, to kind of deflect Mercedes onto something else.
This could be where we see Chris Statlander turning on her.
I could see that. But yeah, it's I do not see Mercedes losing her first match in AEW.
I am hoping between now and then that she has at least another match. So it'll be her first pay-per-view match.
Mercedes?
But yeah.
There's no way. No, I don't think so. I think they're going to sell pay-per-views based on seeing Mercedes Moné's first match. I don't think they give that away for free for her first match. But yeah, I guess we'll see. But so then we've got the AEW International title. Seems like every match is a title match almost, or has a champion.
It's AEW.
Well, WWE's not much. They're getting a lot of titles too, but not as much as this. So AEW International Championship match. We've got Roderick Strong defending against Kyle O'Reilly. Here's the thing with this match is that this should have a very good backstory, and it does, right? If you've been paying attention. I mean, they've been, all the way back to their NXT days.
Even farther past that,
yeah.
ROH, PWG.
Yeah. So my problem with this match is, number one, they didn't build upon that story enough, or build on it here and like make that more well known to the fans that don't know all of that. And I think they rushed this particular match, because Kyle O'Reilly's just been back not that long, and
he came back at the last pay-per-view.
Okay, so a month though, and if that, and they just rushed right into this, and I think that they should have had Kyle O'Reilly beat a couple of other members of of this stable or whatnot. The match itself was okay. I mean, work wise, it was fine. I had a really hard time caring about this match, and the selling I don't feel was the best. So it was really just move. And it was all right, look at this cool high spot. Look at this cool high spot. But it was just a bunch of moves strung together, and I had a hard time caring about this.
It was a fairly standard AEW match, which I was sad because I know these two can go well. They've had some stuff in when they were in NXT that proves as such. And I agree with you. I think the selling and the story of the match kind of killed me. They had a ton of opportunities. So Kyle O'Reilly just came back from a second fusion in his, I think it was his back or neck or both. And this was after 18 months of being out with that injury. And you had Roderick Strong, who's formerly known as the Messiah of the Backbreaker, who ends up doing a crap ton of Backbreaker variants in this, including one where he picks him up and drops him as a Backbreaker from the second rope onto the top rope. Like, he drops him directly onto it and then he bounces off. And puts him in, the stronghold, which is a Boston Crab, hits a bunch of other backbreakers. Kyle O'Reilly barely sells his back. Grabs hell yeah. If it was me after that big bump, a backbreaker off the top, I would be selling my back constantly. I would oversell it so that everything I do hurts. And that's the sympathy bits that you get as a face to overcome. You don't have to do hardly as many bumps and stuff that you were taking in these. And they take some crazy bumps. I mean, the End of Heartache, which is the finish for Roderick Strong, which he hits and doesn't pin him with, is a version of a backbreaker where he picks him up for a suplex. As he gets him the vertical, he kind of just lets him continue to go up, and then he drops down and makes the guy land in almost like a backstabber position on him. And it's an insane bump. I don't know why you would ever take that bump unless it's a finish. And I would have had that be the finish or build right into the stronghold and have him do a tap out. Not that the face should tap out, but you know what I mean. Like, there's opportunity there. And it's just, this match needed a proper agent on it, I think, to kind of pull the reins in on these two and give them the story that was obviously right there that they didn't have.
Yeah, and Strong eventually did hit the end of Heartache to finish the match. But yeah, it was a good match. I just couldn't get into it. And then after the match, the biggest thing was Adam Cole was wheeled out in his wheelchair, and then he stood up and he walked to the ring, and it looked like he was going to turn on Wardlow, who also came out. That was the other thing too, by the way. Wardlow came out to kind of like run interference or distract the referee, but really did nothing.
Well, I did find out the reason for this.
Okay.
Later on. I don't know why they didn't switch it at the end, but it was so on the way to the arena. Wardlow was in a severe car accident where the vehicle he rented also flipped. Like, it was pretty gnarly. Yeah.
Oh, geez.
For real. So, and like, he barely made it to the show. That's why he's not even in gear. He's like in a t-shirt and jeans, is because they like literally rushed there from the thing and got there like shortly before the match started. So there was a whole bit of story that was missing because of that. That being said, Mike Bennett could have easily done that spot instead. But yeah, I think it was designed to build to the turning on Wardlow, but because Wardlow didn't do much of anything, it didn't really make sense.
Yeah, I mean, Adam Cole, did like foreshadow it with his look. He looked like he was going to super kick Wardlow, just the way he was looking at him side-eyed. But yeah, they're building to something there. Will it matter? I don't know. So then you've got the next match, which, oh geez, we got the FTW title match. Hook defending against Chris Jericho, and
Hook attempting to kill Chris Jericho,
or Jericho attempting to kill himself. One of the two. This was a match. They used a bunch of weapons, and Chris Jericho took some crazy bumps that almost died. That made him almost die through a table and everything. But it was very sloppy. It was very, like, it looked like Jericho was leading Hook through the match the entire time. calling
Mhm.
spots very obviously. And the crowd was not having it. Like, they were chanting basically like, "Go away, Jericho," and "Retire, Jericho," and "Stay home," and all of that. And I think Jericho really needs to like take himself off TV for a little bit so that the fans can miss him, because he's in dangerous territory here of almost getting, what they used to call X-Pac heat,
Yeah, the go home heat.
Yes, it's like, and which is a shame because he's reinvented himself so many times, and he's had so much goodwill in the past that it'd be a shame to see him kind of kind of go down that path, and where the fans no longer care about him.
Yeah, I agree. This match, hands down, was the worst match on the card.
Mm-hmm.
And it did two horrible things. One is it made Jericho get the go home heat. Like he did not get the good heat. He got
Mm-hmm.
we don't want to see you anymore heat, right? And it made him look like garbage. By the way, Jericho does win this and becomes the new FTW champion for whatever the reason. And then what it does also is it makes Hook look like crap because he's lost. And then also it does the one thing you don't want to do with Hook, and that's it showed all of Hook's green and like his flaws. It shows exactly how green he is, and you cannot be doing that with Hook. My oldest daughter loves Hook. Like, there are two wrestlers that she will literally sit there and drool at on TV, and that's Hook and Dominic Mysterio, for whatever the reason. And she could have cared less about this match. She just plopped on her phone because there was nothing there for her or anybody else to give a damn about Hook. And you don't want that with that character. He's so limited in what he can do, but what he can do is so good. You need to push his strengths and hide a lot of his weaknesses. And this match did the complete opposite.
It exposed him, really.
Yeah.
Which
the biggest pop of this match, by the way, if you listen to it, is right at the end of the match, right before Jericho goes in for the pin. Taz, who was on commentary, stands up. And the fans thought, oh, Taz is going to get in and get his receipt from a couple of nights beforehand when Jericho pushed him and put him in the Taz mission. And he didn't. He was on the outside of it and I didn't do anything in the match. I'm not saying that this would have saved the match if he would have done that, but I'm sure that a lot more people would be a lot happier if that's the way that match would have ended.
Yeah, and Jericho should know better here. He shouldn't try to put Hook through a match that he's not ready for. It shouldn't have went as long as it did too. It seemed like it went on forever.
Sure as hell felt like it.
This might very well end up being it was definitely the worst match on the pay-per-view. But it might very well end up being the worst match of the year, unless Ric Flair decides to have one more match or something.
Don't put it past him. So.
Yes. Should be Jericho and Flair.
Oh, why did you put that in the world? For the FTW title.
Yes, in a hardcore match. Yes. Oh my gosh.
He doesn't have Andrade there to do the match for him.
Yeah, I mean, you could have Vince Russo book it. It could be an oxygen tank on a pole match.
Sure. If you're gonna do that, you have Beefcake be the special ring announcer or special ref.
Yeah.
Marty Jannetty and his ugly ankle.
Yes. Yeah. This wasn't very good. So let's move on to the next match. You've got the AEW World Women's Title. You've got Toni Storm defending against Thunder Rosa. Now this one was way better than I thought it was going to be. It was a darn good women's match. And
Darn good match, period. Not just one because it was a women's match.
Yes, of course. It was a great match. And honestly, I would say that this might be, it's arguably that it could be the third best match on the show, maybe fourth, depending on your preferences.
There's a lot of good matches on this show, though.
Yes.
It's going to be hard.
Yes. I don't think it's top two because I think that's reserved for, one of the previous matches. We reviewed the opener and then one match still to come. But they did this thing where Thunder Rosa basically was, had a no makeup look, didn't have the face paint that she normally does. Mm-hmm. This match was excellent. And Toni Storm does eventually finish the match and keep retain the title with the Storm Zero pile driver after she kicked her down low.
Yeah, she got kicked in the cooter.
Sure, yeah. I was looking for a word to say that would be appropriate, but yes, I was going maybe for Lady Yambags, but
somehow mine is a lot less offensive sounding.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, there you go. But this match was great. Yeah, I mean, Tony's gimmick is over, and they had a good wrestling match. I don't know. Anything you want to add to this match?
No, I think that you're right. I think this was a great match, and it did what it needed to do. It brought Thunder Rosa back to Providence, which is a great thing because that means more high-end female stories that they can do for match-wise. And then also Toni Storm just getting more equity into herself and into the title because she beat Thunder Rosa in such a good match, right? And I think this is the kind of stuff that we need to see more of. I think if you start having her not just work, great matches, her being Toni Storm, but her working great matches and then beating people like Thunder Rosa or Soraya like she did to get the title, or Serena Deeb. Now that Serena Deeb's back, have her work Serena Deeb and have these great matches with these people. Then when she loses it eventually to whomever, I'm assuming her lackey whose name escapes me.
Mariah May?
Mariah May. If she loses the title to Mariah May after Mariah May turns face, that's going to make Mariah May. Because now she's got all that equity built into the title and who Toni Storm has beaten. I think that's a great path to go down. AEW used to may or may not decide to do that, but if you have her continue to have these great matches with these great female workers, then you get an opportunity to make a star from beating Toni Storm.
Yeah, I think they're doing a really good job with Toni Storm. Mm-hmm. So next we get the match that was probably the reason that made you say, "Yep, we're getting this."
100%.
Bryan Danielson versus Will Ospreay, and this is very much a dream match. They've never.
This is the match of the year candidate for me, by the way.
Oh yeah. Before they touched. No.
Pretty much. In my headcanon, it was going to be, right. And I actually think my headcanon was not as good as this match was.
Yeah. The crowd was going crazy just with them, being in the ring and the bell ringing. They
were chanting both these guys from the start of the match for the first 5 minutes.
It was amazing. And I do want to mention, did you notice Nigel McGuinness on commentary here? They've really been kind of hammering that him and Danielson have, this beef. So I wonder if eventually Nigel's going to train to, have one last match against Danielson.
Well, he's been training.
Maybe at Wembley. That'd be cool.
That would be cool. So then the rumor is that his last match is going to be against Nigel. His last full-time match.
Right.
That's the thing is, he said he's going to stop being a full-time worker. He'll probably still have matches in between here and there, but Nigel McGuinness has been doing this for a while now. Every time Danielson has a match of any variety, and even so, like, he was taken off commentary on Dynamite. I think it was last week or the week before this happened, and or no, it was 2 weeks before, because he had to apologize on Dynamite because he said something about the people of Seattle, because it's where Brian and Danielson's from, or Daniel Bryan. Oh yeah,
No,
Brian Danielson.
Brian
I was right the first
Danielson.
time. But he said something, so he was taken off commentary, so he had to apologize about it on Dynamite on air, apologize for the things he said and stuff like that. So they're really building a story for this, which, again, I think this is hopefully a turning point for AEW finally making stories, because you make stories with great workers, you make stars, and that's what AEW needs.
Yes. So Nigel had a comment here on commentary where he said, he noted that Brian's dream of dying in the ring while bleeding matches up with his own dream of Brian dying in the ring while bleeding. It was pretty awesome. And this match was awesome. Like, they went all out. Like,
Wrong show.
huh?
Wrong show.
Oh, haha. They really, you could. I'm trying to come up with a Dynasty pun, but it's escaping me. They had a great match though. That, like, and they sold really well. And I can't even possibly like recap like the moves that we saw in this. If you haven't seen it, go back and watch it. It's everything you want out of a wrestling match.
There's only two big moves or sequences I wanted to go over. One was towards the end of the match. One was the finish. So, and I'm assuming you're building to the finish right now with your thoughts. So, the move going into it was Will Ospreay had been working Danielson down and goes for the Oscutter, which is a springboard RKO, right, or cutter. And as he goes to hit this move, Danielson comes with his psycho knee, so a running knee, and hits him in midair. So perfect on that Oscutter. Like, they both go down for the 10 count off this, but it was unbelievably perfectly well timed. These two are amazing. And I knew they were going to be, but it still blew me away on how well it was.
Yeah, and the crowd at one point was actually chanting, "We're not worthy," which is an amazing chant. That, honestly, I think that's so much better than the "This is awesome" chant. I think that's overdone. I like the "We're not worthy" chant for both of these guys. The finish though was so Will Ospreay hits the Tiger Driver 97 pile driver move, or I guess power bomb move.
It's the 91, not the 97.
Oh, okay. It's Tiger Driver something, and hits it, and then Danielson basically is looking like he's got a stinger or something. He's shaking, he's convulsing. The ref's checking on him. He's like motioning, to try to get him some medical help. While he's doing this, Will Ospreay hits his hidden blade and gets the pin. And then, like, Brian goes into full on like convulsing with his neck. He's you hear him like cursing, because he if this was a cell job, and I haven't read anything, I don't know 100%, but he did fantastic with the cell. Now they did do a thing at the end where Ospreay was basically, showing remorse and checking on him. I don't know if you saw any parts of the press conference after the show.
I saw this.
Okay, so Will Ospreay was selling it basically like he didn't know he was hurt before he hit him with that his finish there, and he says that he's retiring that version of the Tiger Driver, and he's not going to use it because he feels terrible that Brian got injured off of it. And Tony Khan says that, Danielson will be all right. And he'll be okay. But I don't know if that was shoot or ain't. I don't know the full story there.
It's work.
Okay. So
before we go on, there's a couple things I want to add on to expand, if you will. Not correct, but expand. One, with the Tiger Driver 91, which he calls the Storm Driver 91.
Okay.
It is a double arm or butterfly powerbomb. So you pick them up from a double arm up to a powerbomb position. The thing is on the 91, you don't pick them up all the way. You get them mostly up, almost like the fairy tale ending or like a Styles Clash. So they're up in that direction. And then he drops down to his knees, and the person taking the bump, the move at the end, hits on what's called a high angle bump. So it's like right up on that against their neck and their shoulders. It looks devastating. And it's tying in on story-wise that because of the neck injuries and stuff that Daniel has suffered in the past, and the reason he was gone for 4 years was due to his neck injury. And that's what played it so well. Subsequently, after he takes that move, Ospreay is working in the crowd. So he's looking at the fans, getting ready to go for his elbow pad, he's trying to go for the hidden blade. As his back is turned, that's when the ref is checking on Danielson and also calling for the doc, Sampson, and stuff like that. And the ref has his back as well to Ospreay, who's in the corner, so he can't see them to say, stop, he's injured. And so as this is happening, Brian's getting up in position, and that's when the hidden blade, which is a back elbow, essentially, to the back of the head. Which, mind you, it took me a long time to figure out how he does that without, destroying somebody every time. But because it looks devastating. And he hits him with that, and that's when it went to there. And the ref's like, what are you doing? What are you doing? And then still counts the pin because this way they can get out of the match kind of thing. All three of them, so Ospreay, Danielson, and the ref, all perfectly timed all of that in a way where it felt so natural to everything, and it didn't really bury anybody. The ref didn't see him coming, so he couldn't stop him. Danielson didn't see it happening because his back was to him, and he was expecting to get the deal with the doctor. And then Ospreay didn't see it because his back was to both of them while the ref was calling for the dog, and didn't see it. It was just in the moment. It just adds more to this match. And again, I've mentioned it multiple times, the story, right? That's so important. And this had a great finish story to it. And then adding on what Ospreay says to making Ospreay ostensibly, you could be the biggest face in the company because of stuff like this, where he's retiring this match out of respect for Danielson. So,
yeah, good stuff all around though. And so we were wondering, what's going to follow that? How do you follow that? Well, the ladder match for the vacant AEW World Tag Team titles, you've got FTR versus the Young Bucks, and there's a story here, and obviously, if you've been listening to us and if you've been paying attention to the story here, they've wrestled 3 times previously. And FTR had come out on top on that third match at Wembley Stadium at All In. And recently, when this match was signed, the Young Bucks said that their mind wasn't in that match because of the altercation between CM Punk and Jack Perry earlier in the night backstage in For Real. And they were going to show the footage of that. And they did show the footage without any commentary on it. It'll be hard to track down online now because AEW's, tried to go out of their way to make it so nobody could see it anymore. But I'm not going to go into the footage. If you want to know my thoughts on that, watch last week's episode when we cover that. I think it was last week's episode. Maybe it was the week before.
Yeah, 2 weeks.
It's one of those. Watch them both.
Yeah.
They're both, or listen to both of them. They're both good listens. But everybody was expecting that Jack Perry would, return in this match, and that was a reason why they would even show the footage. So they have this match. The match was all right. I feel like it wasn't spectacular, but it was, as far as ladder matches go, it was good. But I'm not going to remember this match for the ladder spots. I'm not going to remember this for the match, really.
There's one ladder spot at the very end.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's one table spot that happens that I think that I will remember, and it's because of the velocity of the table spot. It's part of the way through the match, towards the end, they had set a table up outside, leaned up against the barrier, and you had one of the Bucks that just got thrown out, and Cash Wheeler, who's just going nuts through most of this match, goes to do a dive through the rope to hit whichever buck it was on the outside. And he had come with so much velocity. It was insane how fast he was going. Goes, dives, and the buck moves. And so Cash Wheeler goes in through the table and into the barrier, and then he sells a great dead sale. Like, he would look like he legitly was knocked out and stuff like that. It was a fantastic sell to the hold spot and everything else, and it worked towards the finish, but it was amazing on that.
Yeah, so the finish, it looked like FTR might be winning the match when somebody comes out from the crowd wearing what looked like a Sting mask.
I'm pretty sure it was a Sting mask.
Yeah, it looked like a Sting mask to me. Got in the ring, pushed them off the ladder, and the security rushed right into the ring, like, immediately, and they tried to play it off like, oh no, a fan's in the ring. Obviously we knew better, but in this case, but they take the mask off, and it's Jack Perry, and the reaction this got, it lets you know that, yeah, this worked in a way to make Jack Perry a much bigger star than he was before he left. He'll have to send, a thank you card to Mr. CM Punk. But because CM Punk always making those stars. But yeah, I always say, that it's always in the follow-up, and how they followed it up on Dynamite was a worthy follow-up. And so based off of that alone, I'd call Jack Perry's, return a success. And then
Agreed.
the Young Bucks end up winning the belts. So now they're the tag team champions again, which is the same titles they lost, to Sting and Darby Allin. Now they've regained them.
Becoming the first tag team in AEW history to be a three-peat tag team champion. Also, for all the fans listening, that is currently 4 shots to take from the CM Punk drinking game from Psycho. So,
oh boy. Yeah, I mean, any last thoughts on this match or Jack Perry's return in general?
I think you're right. Like, for what this isn't going to have anything to write home about. This is going to be. Oh, that was the match that Jack Perry came back in.
That's
So,
exactly what that's what I'm going to remember it as. But it did get a good reaction though, so mission accomplished there. So then we've got our main event, and yeah, this was we've got Samoa Joe defending the AEW heavyweight championship against Swerve Strickland. And I was looking forward to this match. I felt like for months now that Swerve was the guy. And just everything about Swerve, it's they've done such a good job building him up. Like everything it's almost the most perfect push that they've handled with somebody to elevate them. His whole package of, Prince Nana coming out and doing that dance and everything. And Swerve is such a good worker, and he has that like star aura about him. When he comes out, oh, this is somebody to pay attention to.
It's true, and it's such an interesting thing too, because a year ago, about this time, the Mobile Embassy and Swerve Strickland were on ROH. They were running like the whole thing on ROH, and you didn't see them on the on AEW's main shows. Period. Maybe you might catch them in like a dark match or something like that, or like something on like Rampage. But majority of the time, you didn't see them because they're in ROH. And now him working into the main event, and not just that, but he became the first African American to headline a AEW pay-per-view for a title.
Yes. And I mean, spoiler alerts, but he's also the first African American to win the AEW Heavyweight Championship here.
Yep.
And it was a good match. It wasn't like I'm not going to remember this as the best match on this show, because it wasn't. I don't even feel it was the second best match on the show. It can be arguably for third. That one's up for grabs between the ladder match or the Tony Storm match, I feel. But however, this accomplished what it needed to accomplish. So Swerve wins, with that Swerve stomp. And it was a big celebration for Swerve. It was a coming out party, so to speak, for Swerve there. They crowned him the guy. And
I think it was the right choice too.
Yeah, I mean, you have to know when to strike when the iron is hot. And maybe they didn't strike when it was at its hottest. Like, I think maybe last month would have been a bigger deal, but it wasn't. It was still on the uptick, and so I think it was now or never for Swerve. And I feel like they pulled the trigger on it, and I'm excited to see where they go with Swerve from here. Joe will be all right. I mean, I didn't expect him to win the championship to begin with, and he had a nice little run with it.
And you can heat Joe up at any time to make him a main event star.
That's the great thing about Samoa Joe, is that, I mean, look, I mean, he's been in the business how long? Decades now. And if you would have told me that he would be a heavyweight champion of a major promotion, like 2 years ago, even, I'd be like, I don't know. But
who all got injured at WWE for him to be champion?
Right, pretty much.
What plane crash happened?
But yeah, he's AEW World Champion, and he brought credibility back to that championship, I feel. And then not that there wasn't credibility there before, but Joe was a very fine choice to carry the belt, and now we'll see what Strickland can do with it. And I think Swerve eventually, I think the guy to beat him should be Will Ospreay eventually. I don't know when. Maybe it's Wembley. Maybe it's past that. I don't know, but that I think is going to be the next passing of the torch.
That's been the big rumor for a lot of people, is one of two, either him or Okada.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it could be honestly either. I do think Ospreay is the more likely of the two, especially once he goes through dealing with the Don Callis family, because it's obviously going to happen following this Daniel Bryan thing. But that does build into August, which is the Wembley show. So, and I think that would be the perfect place for it to go. And then that also gives Strickland a pretty good reign, like length of reign of the title, right? Because that'll be what,
4 months,
6 months,
4 months,
4 months.
yeah.
So yeah, that's pretty decent reign for what he'll be doing for
That's
that.
how
And
long
especially
Joe held it. So
yeah, December to them now. So yeah, I think Ospreay winning it there will be a really good one. And even if he doesn't win it there, right? But having the title match there, I think is going to be worth doing, because that's still going to sell a ton of tickets for being the hometown boy and everything else. So yeah, all in all, I think that this match was really good too. Because you had a lot of stuff like where it seemed like Strickland was going to lose it. Like they had a great story selling sympathy in this match. You had Joe hit a big muscle buster and having Strickland kick out of it. You had Strickland doing all of his high flying stuff, but also selling really good. And like all in all, this was a really good match. This would have easily been match of the night in any other show.
I was just about to say the same thing. It's like, on any other show, this would be match of the night. But this was a darn good show. I give it 2 thumbs up. Because like from top to bottom, there wasn't, other than the Jericho and Hook match, there wasn't anything like horrible on the show. And even that was like so bad, it was like, it was, I wouldn't say like it was so bad it was good. It was so bad it was like a car crash, you can't take your eyes off of it, sort of thing. Like, oh my gosh, this is horrible. But
yeah, it was and even that, like going, I know we didn't really talk much about the pre-show stuff, but the 6-man was fairly good, had a good story. The 2 matches that preceded it was fairly good for what it did, and it was adding to the story. It was Trent Beretta against
Matt Sydal.
Yeah, Matt Sydal, who was a hometown boy, which was a really good one to get the crowd warmed up for the pre-show. And then as he was, Trevor was leaving, Trent, excuse me, Trent Beretta. That Trevor Lee still stuck in my head. Trent Beretta was leaving. Orange Cassidy, who he's been feuding with since they're now breaking up the best friends, he comes out with his tag partner. My gosh, my brain just turned off his name. Yep, with his tag partner, and then they worked the tag match. But it was an interesting juxtaposition on building the story, because you also had Chuck Taylor come out to save Sydal from Trent, who was beating the snot out of him after the match was over. So that even built story. Like this whole show was story, which is totally not what AEW does, and I was super here for it.
Shibata,
thank you.
Yes, that was Cassie's partner. Yeah, this was a great show. And is it too late to mention one news thing that happened that I forgot about?
Go ahead. What's going on?
Matt Hardy.
Oh, delete. Broken Matt Hardy.
Yes, making his return to TNA.
On an appearance by appearance contract. That's how they're doing it. He doesn't have an official contract with TNA.
Yeah, it was that guy found the perfect spot for him to he's going to be a big deal there. and he wasn't a big deal at AEW anymore, and he wouldn't have been a big deal going to WWE. There's just way too much star power there. So,
and Jeff's contract is actually getting ended earlier than expected, so he should be coming behind him not too short.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a good pickup for TNA, and I think it'll be a good match between those two as far as Matt in TNA. So yeah, it was a moment I watched. Like, I don't watch a lot of TNA, but I watched that, his return. I did pull up that clip to see that. So just wanted to make sure I got that in, because I know that it's like, oh, that was a pretty big deal. So yeah. Good show though.
Yeah, I was all here for it. So but yeah, all in all, like I said, the show was great, had a great story and everything else to it. There's nothing that I could complain about outside of the Jericho match.
Yeah,
So,
and with the angle they shot on Dynamite, I'm looking forward to seeing where they go in the future, and that's all you can ask.
right? All right, guys. Well, let us know what your thoughts were on this show, as well as any other show coming up. We are also now opening up the ability of, if you guys want to reach out to us, to recommend shows for us to review, which is going to be on our newest version of the show called Retro Reviews. We just did that the last show, or last episode we did, or we reviewed
Royal Rumble 1991.
Rumble 91. Yep, Royal Rumble 91. And we'll be reviewing another one next month. So if there's one that you want us to review, let us know. Tell us what you guys want us to do, whether you want us to review that or your thoughts of this, by hitting us up on our social medias. That'll be Be Hero Media on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and now TikTok as well. All available through those. You can also reach me directly at Mike Burke DCW on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok, and Mike Burke Pro on Twitter. You can reach Psycho at Psycho Wrestling on the Facebooks. And then for the upcoming shows for DCW, Devotion Championship Wrestling, you can find us at Salt Lake City at Light Tree Studios for May the 4th be with you on May 4th. It is our next live taping, and that one, of course, is going to probably be some form of Star Wars theme, so because, May the 4th. I'm super excited for that one. I'm a big Star Wars fan, so I hope to see you guys there at that show. And then following that, May 11th, 1 week later, we'll be up in Ogden at Tussle Time at Kamikazes up in Ogden. And then following that, May 31st for bar fights at Aces Saloons in Salt Lake City. And then on June 8th, right back at Light Tree Studios for our next live taping. You can get all the information for all those shows and everything else going on with Devotion Championship Wrestling at Devotion Championship Wrestling on Facebook and Instagram, Devotion Wrestling on TikTok, and DCW Salt Lake City on Twitter. And I'm still calling it Twitter, even though it's X, because, Twitter. So, all right, Psycho, is there anything else we forgot? Anything else we want to go over before we end it tonight?
No, I think I got everything that I remember.
All righty. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed this show. It was a super fun pay-per-view to watch. I'm excited actually to see where AEW goes with all of this. So until next time, guys, this is us tapping out. Have a good night, guys.